Thank you for the opportunity. Okay, we're recording. I have to hit got it, I guess. Okay, thank you and for the opportunity to speak about the efforts of the Titusville Tree Team. You're about to watch a video that was presented to the Titusville City Council on July 16, 2019 at a tree protection workshop by Laura Lee Thompson. Some of you may know Laura Lee. She's now the chair of the Titusville Environmental Committee, which is our sustainability board and does a lot of other things as well. And she started this Space Coast Bird Festival. So this video was her public comment to council regarding the need for the adoption of a tree protection ordinance. And I'll be telling you more about this workshop where this was presented in a little bit, but right now let's go ahead and watch Laura Lee's video if possible. No?
It'll just take me a second, apologies. I don't have all the finesse of.
So it's special because of the
I will rewind it too.
variety of ecosystems found within its boundaries. We have scrub, pine forests, and wetlands,
Yeah,
and because of that, we have beautiful birds at our feeders. When I talk to people who, I love Titusville. I've lived in Brevard all my life, and I can't imagine living anywhere else. Titusville's unique for many reasons. We have the river and the Space Center. We're the gateway to the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge and Canaveral National Seashore. We're also home to the country's largest birding and wildlife festival. Titusville is special because of the variety of ecosystems found within its boundaries. We have scrub, pine forests, and wetlands, and because of that, we have beautiful birds at our feeders. When I talk to people who came here for the birding festival, the most often heard remark is, "It's so green here. I can't believe there's so many trees." People have bought homes here because they came to the birding festival and fell in love with what we have. I'm really concerned that we're losing a big part of what makes our community special. For example, this is prime scrub habitat that's so important for recharging the aquifer where Titusville gets its drinking water. This giant oak tree has been approved for removal. In fact, nearly every tree on this property is doomed. Is that really necessary? This is Sterling Forest. It was one of the first clear-cut subdivisions that happened in our city nearly 15 years ago. I remember how shocked everyone was when the trees came down. As mitigation, one little skinny tree was planted in front of each new home. Some grew into nice trees, but it appears that less than half of those original trees have survived. This is Forest Trace. It was clear-cut before these homes were built. This is what the landscape looked like before it was cleared. One little skinny tree was planted in the front yard of each home. Do crepe myrtles really count as replacement for native trees that were taken out? I wonder if these trees will fare any better than the trees that were planted in Sterling Forest. This is our newest apartment complex, Solomere Grand. This is Wendover Oaks Apartments. Not only were large trees left right next to the buildings, they even left islands in the driveways to save the giant oaks. This is Village Grove in Lucita. The lots are small here, just like the lots are in the new subdivisions. Look how many trees were left on these small lots when the homes were built. These homes are worth more money because they've got trees inside the subdivision and not just around the edges. This is the future for new housing in Titusville if we don't strengthen our tree protection rules. Trees are important to the people who live in our community. We have a wealth of what other communities are struggling to put back into their landscapes at great cost. Why are we allowing this loss of our precious tree resources? It's time for us to create stronger tree preservation regulations for Titusville. I sure do hope you all agree.
Thank you. Recording. Okay, so Kay, you are welcome to get started anytime.
Okay, thank you. Titusville is experiencing an incredible building boom, as is Cocoa. 13 large subdivisions are proposed or under construction involving 5,200 housing units, along with many commercial industrial sites. At least 1,400 wooded acres are being developed with an additional 4,800 acres available for development. Currently, Titusville has an urban tree canopy, that is the area underneath the trees, which covers 37.5% of the area of the city, which includes both public and private lands. However, with developers removing hundreds of acres of trees, this percentage will be declining rapidly. Urban tree canopy, or UTC, provides an important stormwater management function as trees intercept rainfall that would otherwise run off of paved surfaces and be transported into the lagoon through the storm drainage system, picking up various pollutants along the way. In fact, stormwater runoff is the greatest polluter of the lagoon. UTC also reduces the urban heat island effect, reducing heating, cooling costs, lowering air temperatures, reduces air pollution, increases property values, provides wildlife habitat, and provides aesthetic and community benefits such as improved quality of life. In 2019, I began noticing several new developments being bulldozed and cleared of virtually all trees. Without shade trees, new homes were baking under the Florida sun. I researched the comprehensive plan, which indicates that the city will prevent clear cutting of land. I was baffled by this. I arranged an appointment with a city planner who advised that while the comp plan prevents clear cutting, the city's land development regulations allow removal of all but 10% vegetation. He told me that unless the regulations are changed, developers will continue to remove 90% of all vegetation. When I asked the planner how this regulation might be changed to reflect the comprehensive plan, he told me I should rally the citizens to ask council to change the regulations. I accepted his challenge. I wrote a petition to Titusville City Council requesting new tree preservation regulations to protect and preserve wooded acreages from clear cutting during development and to encourage developers to build among existing trees. I circulated this petition via email to virtually every environmental group in Brevard County and received back hundreds of signatures. I spoke and presented this petition to various groups, including the Space Coast Audubon Society, the Titusville Garden Club, the Democratic Club, and the Democratic Party. Members of these groups stepped forward, sending representatives to help me with this initiative. We formed the Titusville Tree Team, a citizen advocacy group. In April of 2019, we presented the petition to council. All those in support of the petition were asked to stand. Some 30 people stood and several spoke, urging council to direct staff to address this issue. As a result, council requested staff to report back with a review of current regulations and provide a plan or options for how the city could strengthen its tree regulations. In July 2019, at a council's tree protection workshop, the team gave a PowerPoint presentation and several members coordinated their speeches with the slides to discuss the benefit of trees and the need to preserve trees in new developments. We pointed out that required landscape saplings would take decades to provide significant shade to residents. As well, Laura Lee Thompson presented her video, which you just saw. That was her public comment to council. After these presentations, council gave staff their ideas of what the ordinance should require. As the council meeting was, all council meetings are video recorded, I was able to transcribe council's comments and quote them back at later meetings. In January 2020, the following year, staff presented its original version of the tree protection ordinance to council. But unfortunately, it retained the very regulation that allowed removal of all but 10% vegetation while providing some protection for larger trees. So it continued to allow clear cutting. We were greatly dismayed. Experienced tree team members set to work rewriting staff's version. With this new version in hand, we met individually with members of the Titusville Environmental Commission and Advisory board to council that makes recommendations to council. In March 2020, the TEC recommended our rewritten version of the ordinance to council. On July of 2020, the Planning and Zoning met reviewing the ordinance and required meetings between developers and tree team members to allow developers to express their viewpoints. Can you hear me just fine?
I can.
Yeah, are there supposed to be slides or anything?
You're not seeing the slides?
No,
No, can't see any.
Oh,
flags.
my
none of
goodness.
us are.
Oh, that is.
I'm glad I paused
for
for a
asking,
moment.
Maureen. Oh, wow. Let me, let's see. It says your screen sharing.
I see your screen.
Yeah, you need to stop screen sharing and let Case share the screen.
It's my screen that we're sharing. The presentation's on my screen. It's not
Oh,
on
it's on
Kate's.
yours.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I'm just going to redo it so that, oh, I'm sorry that you missed those slides. Thank you, Lorraine, for speaking up. Can you see
Yeah,
it?
we were chatting to try to get you somebody, but it's good. Okay.
Okay, and that's, the slides are saying very much what I'm saying, but it just helps reinforce it in your mind, what transpired. Okay, so we'll continue on. Let's see if I can find where we are. Okay. Okay, after several different versions were written by staff, different versions of the ordinance, on September 28, 2021, Council finally adopted a final tree protection ordinance that requires residential developers preserve an area of tree canopy of 15% of development. So these are existing trees on 15% of the area of the land, and plant an additional 10% for a combined of 25%. These required tree canopy areas will be permanently protected in the record books. These tree protection areas will be owned in common by the homeowners association of the development. Incentives were provided for commercial industrial developments to preserve 10% and plant an additional 10%. While these percentages were not as high as the team had requested, they preserve a significant amount of area of tree canopy for residential developments, thus providing new residents the benefit of living among trees. Other tree protections are provided as well in the ordinance. So let me give you an idea of how we try to influence council. To influence council as well as advisory boards, the tree team is provided a link to their agendas. Team members are encouraged to send emails and or attend the particular meetings and to speak at meetings about pertinent agenda items. Sometimes Brevard environmental groups are notified of the need to send emails to council, resulting in a large influx of emails. Team members have spoken at many development review meetings, asking for reduction of bulldozing, additional preservation of trees, and reduced density. We have asked that approval of developments on areas of critical concern where our well fields are located be denied. As well, the tree team was influential in the October 2021 adoption of a low impact development ordinance. Low impact development, or LID, utilizes stormwater management practices that reduce polluted stormwater discharge into the lagoon. Again, stormwater runoff is the greatest polluter of the lagoon. The team invited Dr. Lisa Soto of Marine Resource Council to speak to council on LID. We encouraged the mayor and city planners to attend the Marine Resource Council's LID conference in October, and I was able to attend as well. The adopted LID ordinance requires applicants to provide an analysis of the potential to use low impact development design practices to meet the stormwater management design criteria. 7 LID best management practices are required, including maximizing the protection of trees and native vegetation. In fact, trees are considered one of the best LID practices because as they grow, they reduce more and more stormwater runoff. Many incentives in the ordinance are provided to utilize other LID best management practices. Once the Florida Department of Environmental Protection provides its new stormwater management rules to include LID, we're hopeful Titusville's LID ordinance will be modified and be more requiring rather than just encouraging. After the December 2020 7.2 million gallon sewage spill in Titusville, the team met individually with council members requesting a number of remediation measures. I say it was a 7.2 million gallon sewage spill, but not all of that sewage went into the lagoon. Some of it was captured in these ponds at Sandpoint Park and was hauled away to be treated. Team members asked for dredging of 2 of the contaminated ponds that discharged into the lagoon, but the city was unwilling to undertake this dredging as the state did not require it. The city agreed to install bee mats, the floating vegetative mats in these ponds, and to plant 28 large cedar and sable plants around one of the ponds at Sandpoint Park for a cost of $25,000. The team organized a mangrove planting event along the lagoon shoreline at both Sandpoint Park and Marina Park, purchasing mangroves from Marine Resource Council. He brought beautiful volunteers and others planted the mangroves, which will help absorb nutrients discharged from the sewage spill. Team members notified council that water sample data collected by members indicated that likely the sewage leak was ongoing throughout the summer of 2020, leading to algae blooms and manatee mortality. On October 11th, we met with city planners to discuss the third leg of our efforts in urban forestry program, which is the planting of trees on public property to help counter the removal of trees by developers. The city was recently awarded a grant for an urban forestry program, which will help the city set a goal for a citywide tree canopy. As an effort to get an urban forestry program up and rolling, December 4th, the team had a tree planting event at Chain of Lakes Park in Titusville. 115 cypress trees and live oak trees were planted by 50 volunteers in less than 2 hours. The volunteers were very energetic. The trees were obtained from Pelican Island Audubon Society of Vero Beach. These trees will reduce stormwater runoff into the ponds, which discharge into the lagoon. As well, they will eventually provide shade to trail walkers and habitat for wildlife. Volunteers are continue to water the trees twice a week. The team has begun pressing for a street tree giveaway program to give residents a tree to plant in the public right-of-way between the road and sidewalk. Street trees are particularly beneficial as they reduce stormwater runoff and temperatures while providing charm to the community. Our goal is for the city to provide 2,000 street trees as recommended by a city consultant. The city of Coco's recent urban forest management plan recommends that Coco also begin to plant street trees, as only 25% of Coco's sites are planted. Currently, Titusville has a well-balanced city council, in my opinion. Mayor Diesel is receptive to the initiatives of the tree team. However, 3 Titusville council seats are subject to election in 2022. A tree team member has indicated that she will run for council seat 1, so I'm happy that she's willing to run. The vision of the Titusville Tree Team has always been to preserve trees for the benefit of residents, wildlife, aquifers, and the Indian River Lagoon. Trees reduce temperatures, provide bird and wildlife habitat, filter groundwater, and reduce polluted stormwater discharge into the lagoon. To reach our goals, we have strived to establish cooperative relationships with council members, meeting individually with them when needed. To build a rapport with Vice Mayor Jo Lynn Nelson, the team planted flowers at the Boys and Girls Club she was establishing. At all times, we remain respectful of our elected officials. Many council members live along the lagoon and can no longer deny the lagoon's degradation. As a result, council has listened and acted upon our reasonable requests for further protection for the natural resources of our community. In fact, just last night, Laura Lee Thompson spoke to council about the current plight of the manatees. As you're likely aware, over 1,000 manatees have died since January in Florida, and many of them are in Brevard County in the lagoon. Hundreds of manatees are congregated right now at the Port St. John's FPL plant. Fish and Wildlife has promised to feed the manatees, but they have not yet begun. After Laura Lee brought this to the attention of council last night, council agreed to write a letter to Governor DeSantis on city letterhead urging that FWC start the manatee feeding program. You can also email the governor urging him to instruct FWC to begin feeding the manatees. The governor's email address is governor.desantis@eog.myflorida.com. I'm going to say that again, governor.desantis@eog.myflorida.com. So that's my presentation for you today, and I thank you very much, and I'm more than willing to try to answer any questions you might have.
Do you think that you could walk us through these, the photos that you had sent me for the end to tell us a little bit more about what's going on in the photos?
Sure. So, I mean, just imagine living on that street with your street lined with trees. They've actually made the sidewalk go around that beautiful tree. And that makes that neighborhood so much more livable. That is a neighborhood in Titusville with the current old trees. I love to walk, but to walk out in the direct hot sunshine, especially along the concrete or the road, is just unbearable in the summertime. But if we will preserve these older trees and plant additional trees as well, our communities will be just more livable. It just goes without saying. It'll also reduce the temperatures, provide bird habitat, and just make for charming communities. Think of Savannah that saved all of its trees. Okay, this is a picture that shows the differences in temperatures when we have trees and when we don't have trees. And this one on the top is like 112 degrees. And down below, it's like 70 degrees if you want to change it to Fahrenheit. It's quite obvious where you would prefer to shop. And so trees are actually very beneficial to businesses as well, and not just neighborhoods. Yes, you can go ahead.
Okay. Give me 1 second while my mouse.
Okay. Okay, here's a new development. And as you can see, those are the required landscape trees, saplings that the city requires them to plant. But this whole area was covered with huge trees, a lot of pine trees and forest trees. And it also had a lot of gopher tortoises. I have a friend who lives next door to this, and she says the gopher tortoises were just trying to escape the bulldozers. FWC is supposed to come out and rescue them, but that just doesn't always happen. So those homes and those people, just that neighborhood to me is not as livable as one that happened as the first picture that you saw. It's just so hot there to walk along the street, or say to be unloading your ice cream in your driveway. It's going to melt before you even get it in the house. I just think we can do better for our new residents than that. Yeah. All right, these are some of the trees that were planted at Sandpoint Park by the Max Brewer Bridge. This pond that you see there was completely filled with sewage in December last year, and it had all the fish died in it. I mean, there were 3-foot long tarpons, and that was the first indication that there was a problem here in that park. My friend lives in the condo right next door, and he called me up and said, all the fish are dead and all the birds are eating on the fish, and we don't know whether the fish died, and maybe now the birds will die. So man, we were frantic, and we started calling the mayor and Jeff Davis of Parks and Recreation, and they all came running down there, and they were monitoring the sewer lines, and they couldn't quite figure it out what was leaking or where it was leaking. And it took them about a whole day to even figure out where it was leaking. It was leaking in a pond in the background there. There was a pipe underneath the pond, and that pressure of the pond and the concrete just eventually caused that pipe to burst. It was probably leaking all summer long, though we have records that show that the lagoon was degrading throughout the summer. We can't really prove that it was from that leak, but it sure, every indication does show that it was from that leak. So then the team
Lorraine has her hand raised, so I just.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know how to do this hand raising.
Were you wanting to say now?
Oh, I just wanted to ask, why did they select native, these are sables, right? Native.
Yes,
sable.
these are sable palms.
And why did they select those? I mean, that they don't, so, they're great trees. They don't provide as much shade as some
Okay,
of
we also planted cedar trees, eastern cedar trees. And the reason why those two trees were chosen out of a number of trees is that they can handle salt spray and occasional inundation of salt water into that pond. This park, Sandpoint Park, is right on the lagoon, and when we get strong storms, the salt spray covers the whole park, and many trees just cannot tolerate that at all. Cypress can barely tolerate that. We plant 4 or 5 cypress trees were planted nearby here, and they're really struggling to exist because of the salt spray. But sable palms can grow right along the lagoon. As you know, they're very adaptable to salt spray, and so can the cedar trees.
Okay, you've got 2 more hands raised on this slide, so.
Okay, help me out with who's.
Yeah, go ahead.
How about Susie?
Susie, go ahead.
It was really from one of the previous slides. I planted, when I moved into my house, 6 oaks, and that was 30 years ago. So now they're huge. And people come in my neighborhood and go, oh, what a beautiful neighborhood. Well, let's all go plant a freaking tree, because the tree shades the street and everything. But
Yes.
what I discovered is people, oh, it's going to fall, hurricane's going to knock it over and fall on my house, which is ridiculous. And I try not to say that to people, but what is your response to that, Kay, when people say that?
Okay. In Titusville, and I assume this is true in other communities because the state has a law about this too. If you own a piece of property, not a developer, but you own your home lot and you want to remove a tree, you have every permission to remove that tree. You can say that it's disease, or you can just remove it. And I have heard, and I even investigated, that some insurance companies are requesting their policyholders to remove trees that they think might fall on their house. I don't want a tree to fall on my house either. Nobody wants a tree to fall on your house. So it really amounts to the right tree at the right location. For instance, my house, 3 sides of it I have large oak trees around them on 3 sides. But on the east side, where the wind comes funneling down the street and the hurricane winds come, I have no trees on that side. So it is a matter of planting the right tree in the right location. Then it's very helpful, of course, to have your trees checked yearly, or maybe by every other year by a certified arborist. Make sure that it's not rotting so that it won't be likely to fall on your house, or that the large branches are not rotting and that they're pruned back so that they won't fall on your house. Having trees on your property is a responsibility, but it is also giving back to your community, as you've said. So we all have our responsibilities. We need to maintain our yards, maintain our homes. If you have a pet, if you have a child, you have these responsibilities. So having a tree in your yard is a responsibility, but it is also an honor. We have more oxygen in our yard. We have shade. We have all the benefits of living among trees. But you do need to take that responsibility seriously. You certainly wouldn't want the tree to fall down on you, your house, your neighbor. No, so we need to address these issues as well.
Okay. Lorraine, did you have something more?
Yeah, so I was going back to the trees themselves. So I was wondering if the consideration was that they have release less foliage and therefore less nutrients into the water body. because as we have a stormwater pond that that we would like to get trees around. And one of the considerations is, this is a pond that's used for water reuse, and adding or increasing the nutrient level in the pond would impact the water quality. So was that a consideration here, or that was just totally because of the salt water?
Okay, trees absorb nutrients.
No,
And so
I understand, but when their
okay.
leaves drop, they break down.
Oh, the trees, the
Yeah.
leaves that fall.
Right.
Yes. Well, they also put in bee mats or floating vegetative mats on that same pond, and those have grown incredibly fast. I was so surprised. They have a contract with the BMAX Corporation, and they had to come out within like 2 months and pull those BMATs out because the sewage had filled those ponds. And so there was an excess of nitrogen in those ponds. But in regards to your pond at your facility or in your homeowners association, if you're concerned about the leaves blowing in it, I would suggest that you get the landscaper to blow the leaves away and to pick up the leaves.
Well,
the
concern is it's a large body of water, and the concern is, anyway, I was just wondering if because certainly these trees, the native sables, although they don't provide the kind of shade that you want, when they lose their fronds, it's not an issue in terms of the nutrients that might end up in the water.
Okay.
We also have the floating wetlands.
Okay, these trees were planted in clusters, as you see, and so the clusters will provide more shade. Sable palms are also very good at stabilizing shoreline because they will grow right along the lagoon. And this is a park. So the park landscapers do pick up the fronds. And I'm not saying they do as good a job as I would do at my house, but they do pick up the fronds because they cannot mow them. The other trees were cedar trees, and so they have evergreen leaves. So if I had a pond and I was concerned about, I would be careful what trees I would pick. For instance, I would not pick, I wouldn't pick a sycamore tree that has those great big crunchy leaves, you know. I would be careful about the leaves. The live oak trees only shed their leaves throughout like February and March. They shed most of their leaves. So it would be wise to choose what kind of tree that you would want by that pond so that it wouldn't dump huge tree leaves in it.
Thank you. And one quick question. Sorry if I missed it. The tree team is an NGO?
No. No.
Okay, you're government sanctioned board?
No, we are just a citizens advisory group. We don't.
Okay, so but you are a citizens advisory group and operate under sunshine laws?
No.
Nope.
No,
okay,
we're not a government agency whatsoever, so sunshine laws do not apply to us.
Okay, so then you're not a formal advisory board to the council?
No, we are not an advisory board to the city. We are merely citizens who speak at city council meetings during the public comment time.
Great.
Very good. We're not a 501k. We don't have a website. No, we are citizens who communicate largely via email chains.
Yep.
And we don't have a Facebook. And this is by choice.
Okay.
Yes.
Excellent. Just keeping a track of time, we have one hand raised, and I just want to say that we're at 9 minutes to 2 o'clock. We have a couple more slides, and we want to have a stopping point at 2 o'clock to make sure that everybody knows that we've enjoyed their company and participation, and we will be able to stay after. So anybody who can stay late that would like to ask their questions can know that, and anybody that wanted to contribute before they left might want to raise their hand now before the 2 o'clock. And we have Kimberly. You raised your hand.
I just wanted to quickly mention that a lot of the plantings some of those debris issues that come from vegetation falling from the trees can be mitigated by other plantings. So at the base of the trees, if you put in some native grasses, different vegetation, native obviously, that is self-sustaining, then it'll help absorb some of those nutrients and mitigate that as well. Monoculture is never as good as, you know, a planted area that has multiple types of species. So there's a lot, and that's just one quick issue that, you know, is very easily implemented into a plan when you want to put in trees, but you're not quite sure. But there's a wealth of information out there that you can research on how to make those gardens.
Absolutely. The Florida Native Plant Society has a great website that I used to come up with ideas, because it told which trees were salt tolerant and which were not. And each location is unique into itself. Sandpoint Park by the lagoon has its own unique qualities. On the other hand, Chain of Lakes Park, which has a series of lakes, but is not right on the lagoon, we planted different trees there. So it really depends, right tree, right location. Okay, here you can see during construction that it's totally been bulldozed flat, totally been denuded of vegetation. Those trees in the background are on the very periphery of the development. And sometimes the city will be able to convince them to leave some trees on the edge. This is, of course, before the new ordinance, tree ordinance. But another thing that happens, you can see this soil is just white. What happens oftentimes is that the developer will dig a storm retention pond, and he will take the dirt from that pond and put it on the house lots to raise the lots up a little bit higher. But he's taken dirt from maybe 6 feet down where there's no nutrients whatsoever, and he's putting it on your house lot. And so you're left with this just barren soil that will hardly grow anything. And then they lay the sod down on this barren soil, and the only way you can get that sod to grow is to fertilize it and fertilize it and water it and water it. And that's just counterproductive to what we want in our communities. I want the residents in new developments to have beautiful places to live. I want them to be able to open their window and hear owls like I do at my house, and the cardinals singing and coming to the feeder. I think our new residents deserve a lovely place to live, very livable. That's part of my concern.
You're inspiring more questions. Trevor, we haven't heard from you in Verna yet. Would you like to ask your question or make your comment?
Yes, I have a question for Lorraine. She was asking about what type of trees to plant. The city of Cocoa has a tree board. Have you asked the tree board about that?
Where's it at? Oh yeah, my husband used to sit on it.
Okay.
Believe me, they are, you know, I mean, I know what kind of trees that we might prefer. I was just trying to see if there were any different answers. But yeah, we're getting resistance from the utility staff for planting trees around the ponds where we create the water for reuse. That's treated wastewater mixed with stormwater, and their concern are eroding water quality if you have too much foliage falling in the water.
Then you can counter by saying that the trees they absorb the nutrients as well. So I guess it's a balancing act, you know, like most things.
If I could jump in for 1 second, you know, as you mentioned in your presentation also, it's the management plan. And so to enter into these understandings that we need the foliage, we need to plant more trees and preserve the trees and, you know, prioritize conservation. It's a management plan, it's ongoing. So if you look at it as an opportunity to, you know, engage with that space more often, to get community groups engaging together, it becomes an opportunity for, you know, more outreach and a positive environment instead of just a negative effect. And, you know, the management plan is very important as you've spoken about in great detail today. Thank you.
Okay, this is a tree. I think I'm ready to talk now. This is a cluster of trees that's also shading the roadside and making that neighborhood more livable. As rain falls down and hits the upper canopy of the tree, so much of it actually just stays in the tree. You'll notice that if you just get a light rain and you walk under that tree, that the pavement under that tree is dry until you get a little bit more rain and it starts stripping off. That's called intercepting. And so that reduces the stormwater runoff into the lagoon. All these trees, like I said, are the best LID managed practice because they continue to grow and continue to reduce stormwater runoff into the lagoon, while retention ponds and virtually all other LID and stormwater management facilities, as time goes on, their capacity to remove nutrients is decreased, and the ponds actually should be dredged every 10 years, which very seldom happens. So because of the expense of it. So any other questions?
And before we get into more questions, just because we're running up to that 1 hour mark of the 2 o'clock, and we've had a lot of people have been very interested in the presentation and follow up here. I'd like to quickly cover this slide about our upcoming events, and then we'll circle back to more questions and discussion. So next we have our next time to get together is our COCO Cares meeting on December 18th, where we will take some of what we've discussed here and what we're learning in kind of 2 different areas. Okay, I'm seeing that we've got the citizen action and all the activities that you took, as well as this really content-rich topic of the trees. But we're going to take some of the flavor of what we've had today, and we're going to continue on the 18th to have our December COCO Cares meeting to ask what direction we want to take for 2022 and to consider new planning and development. Our city is about to grow even more than what we currently have under construction. We also have another event where we're going to get to CK again, and that will be on January 8th at 1 o'clock. And right now we're planning for the Cocoa Museum Pavilion, which is where Lorraine Kosh had her community conversation a few weeks ago. And it was a really nice area, quiet, secluded at the museum. And Kay will be giving some of this again, but as you can see it, so the content is so rich that whoever's there will contribute greatly to our discussion and where that goes. So please attend and bring friends and neighbors if you're so inclined. And then I also put the Ron DeSantis address here so that you can see it. Sometimes it's easier to visibly see it. And the ask, Kay, that I heard is, I believe, request the governor to support the Florida Fish and Wildlife in feeding the manatees. It could simply be that simple, because sometimes when I get an email address and an ask, I don't quite know what to say in it. And so you're putting it out there that it can really just be that simple, that you live in Brevard County, you're a resident, and that you're interested in this topic. And my last bullet point is if you could share your thoughts, feedback, and ideas in our COCO Cares Facebook group for any of you that are inclined and willing and engaged in social media. This helps us get the word out to other people so that we can get that buy-in that Kay has documented and outlined for us of how can we influence the local discussion, right? And in order to do that, we need more places of connection. So thanks for letting me go through that. And do we have anybody now? It's at 2 o'clock, and I'm going to do a stop share on this, and I'm going to do a stop on the recording so that we'll just be together. So I'm